Hey there, welcome back to the Arroyo Podcast. Today, we are going to be going over a series that we started at our church this month, talking about guidance from Proverbs. And so we're going to, really this last Sunday, Pastor Josh talked about relationships. So I'm excited to get to this topic today. But before we do that, make sure that you smash that subscribe button that you know when we post, so you can keep up with all up to date on all of our content. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, and let's get right to it.
What do we got? We're talking about relationships.
Which
is easy,
that,
right? Everybody's relationships are easy. There's never drama. There's never conflict.
Yeah, that's
so this
right.
should
Just
be an
find
easy
the perfect
conversation.
person, and
right.
exactly. But hey, I was gone this last Sunday. I was traveling, so I missed it.
That was a relationship I missed this Sunday. You.
I didn't, but I heard that.
That's good.
Yeah, I heard that it was a great sermon. A lot of people had really good feedback on it. So today we're just gonna kind of have some follow-up questions about some relationship topics. So for the first one, we have this. I just scrolled away. Here we go. What does forgiving someone look like on a Monday morning if you've decided not to extend them more trust? The reason why we talked about that is because you said, we're called to love and forgive everybody to the same level, but not trust them at the same level.
Yep.
So then what does that forgiveness look like after deciding not to extend that trust?
Yeah. So forgiveness is a canceling of the debt. One of the greatest parables that Jesus ever told regarding forgiveness, it's about this guy that had this massive debt. If you converted the amount that we're told the person owed their master in biblical times, if you convert it to, and you account for all the inflation that's happened, especially recently, it's worth like billions of dollars. It's worth this massive sum that the servant could have never paid on his own. And the good news in the parable is that the master offers to freely forgive the servant of all his debt. But then he goes right after that and he finds somebody that owes him something way smaller, and he chokes the guy out and throws him in prison over the debt. And there's a lot of punishment as a result of that for that servant. And we're told that if we do not forgive, that we will not be forgiven. And so it's a really serious matter. And so I think, again, forgiving a person, it's about canceling the debt. You don't hold anything against them. You want what's best for them. You don't want them to suffer the consequences of their sin from you. But that's not the same as letting them in into your life and fully trusting them. And I think, trust in a lot of ways is earned. Forgiveness is given freely. Forgiveness is something you give freely as a gift. Trust is something that somebody earns through their actions and their behaviors. Now, there's a tension to that because the Bible also says in 1 Corinthians 13, which is what I touched on in the message a little bit as well, is that love always trusts. And so the point there is that we are to want to trust, not that we trust everybody equally and are fools and are gullible, but the point is that we have a heart that wants to be trusting and we give people a chance, but we're also wise. If somebody hurts us the same way over and over and over again, it's a clear sign that we probably shouldn't trust them. We can forgive them, but we don't have to trust them. And there are different levels to trust too. I trust my wife about as much as I could trust anybody. I trust you. I trust, the guy that's driving the car that I'm in an Uber with. Do I trust him to watch my kids? No, but I trust him to drive me in that car. And so there are different levels of trust that we have for different people based off of their behavior and based off of the criteria that we observe through their behaviors and all of those things. So that's what I would say. I don't know. You got any follow-up on that or any thoughts on that?
No, I think, you nailed it, man. You said in 1 Corinthians 13, and you kind of mentioned this a little bit. You said in 1 Corinthians 13, that means that love has a bias towards trusting. Those were the words.
Yeah.
And assuming the best. So does that bias ever need to be suspended? And if so, who decides when, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, I do think that we live in a time where people are more hesitant to trusting than probably before. in earlier generations. We kind of live in a culture. I mean, cancel culture isn't as popular as it was a few years ago, but we're still living, I think, in the wake of cancel culture. We're living in a time where like people are cutting off like parents and in-laws like really quickly. And so I want to push back against that. Losing trust in a person is something that is a result of like, I think, a massive failure. Like, you don't just cut your in-laws off or your parents off because they annoy you or because they have a different opinion on, a political issue or, something like that. Yeah. It's when somebody has deeply wounded you in a very serious way, a deep betrayal. And that is when serious and deep trust should be broken. Again, there are different kinds of trust in different relationships. There's trust that you have to have with your coworkers. There's trust that you can have with, a spouse. That's the deepest level of trust, really, that you could have with any human relationship. So there are different levels of trust for different levels of relationships. And so what I would say is the level of sin or the level of offense should determine the level of trust that is affected. And what I've seen happen a lot of times is there are small sins that are given massive consequences and massive amounts of trust are taken because of small sins. I think that's wrong and that's unfair, and that's ultimately it's unjust. What would be just is that the amount of trust that is lost is proportional to the amount of sin that was committed. And so it's like, if you have a magnitude 1.0 sin against you, well, it's still a sin and it's still going to shake you up like an earthquake, but it's not the same as a magnitude 7.0. And so you shouldn't let there be a magnitude 7.0 effect and destruction of a relationship when it was a 1.0 earthquake. And so I just think we need to be really careful to like get out of our emotions, because I know some of you, it's like, I don't want to trust them ever again because they hurt me and I feel bad about it. And it's like, okay, well, try to suspend your emotions for a second and look at this objectively. And it's really helpful to talk to other people. Like if you're in a relationship and you're trying to discern, should I trust this person again? Or should what they did or said to me affect my relationship with them? Should I have no relationship with them? Should I have maybe an altered relationship with them? That it's maybe just, I still have a relationship, but it's not what it was. I don't trust them as deeply as I once did. It's really important to suspend your emotion from that and try to look at it as objectively as possible. And one of the best ways to do that is to talk to other people, and watch this. Talking to other people that are also not emotionally invested. You have to talk to a true third party. So if you're talking to a friend that's also as involved as you are and as emotional as you are, probably not going to be the most helpful advice. So try to talk to somebody that's outside the situation, that's godly, that loves you, and I think that's probably the best way.
Yeah.
So
definitely agree with that. We've been talking a lot about rebuilding trust with somebody that hurt us. So let's say you're talking to somebody that is wanting to do that, right? They're wanting to trust again. They're wanting to love somebody again. How could they actually rebuild trust with someone practically after like a big betrayal? Or whatever,
say an adultery. Or maybe
or
something really serious in a marriage.
Relapse or a financial
addiction,
financial, disappointment, deception. Even.
Maybe they spent a bunch of money and didn't tell you, and then you found out about it. Whatever. Yeah. There are unfortunately a lot of ways that people can damage trust in major ways. So, again, forgiveness is free. You should forgive freely. You should forgive instantly, and you should forgive fully. When somebody sins against you in a major way, you shouldn't trust them fully and freely right away. It is a process of restoration. And so what it could look like, let's just stick with the financial illustration. Say you loan somebody money. You loan them $20,000. And they say, hey, I'll pay you back in 1 year. A year passes, and they never pay you back. And then another year passes, and they say, hey, can I have $10,000 from you to loan? And you could say, you know what? You kind of lost my trust. I loaned you 20. You said you'd give it back. You never did. You've lost my trust to give you large sums of money. Here's what I'll do, though. I'll give you $1,000, and I'll give you a year to pay it back. Does that sound good? And you give them a chance. So maybe you don't give them as much trust as you did before, but you give them a chance with smaller stakes. And then if within a year they pay back that $1,000, then it's like, okay, well, I can trust you with that small amount. Okay. let's say another few years pass by and you ask me for 5 and you say you'll pay me back in 3 months. Well, maybe I can trust you in that because you failed with the 20, but you succeeded with the 1, and maybe you admitted that you were wrong to not fulfill your obligation to the 20. So maybe I'll trust you with the 5. And so, whether it's in a marriage, whether it's in a work relationship, whether it's with an in-law, a friend, whomever, and there's no like black and white rules on this. You really have to pray about it and exercise discernment and look at the person, look at yourself, look at the relationship, and just try to find a process where you can slowly ramp things back up. And I would say, don't be too fast or too slow. That's hard to do, but sometimes we want to, because of fear of how they hurt us in the past, maybe we're a little too slow sometimes, and we don't give people enough chances. And then some of you that are maybe more on the codependent side, where you're a little bit more needy relationally, maybe you'll trust them again too quickly. And so what I'd say is just try to find the right pace and the right process. And if they, hit their markers along the process, it could be rebuilt to not just the same trust, but even a greater trust than there was before. But if they don't meet those markers, and you couldn't trust them with a lot, and then you try to trust them with a little, and you realize you can't even trust them with a little, well, then maybe there's a conversation there of maybe the relationship needs to be fully cut off. If you couldn't trust them with a lot, you try to work them back to a little, and they still fail in that, there's a conversation to be had there.
Yeah.
So
for sure. That's great. You mentioned in the sermon something about, restraining your lips and thinking, there was a verse there that talked about restraining your lips and thinking about what you're saying.
Yep.
Not every thought in your head has to be said out loud. So I think about like maybe an anxious or, just a person that overthinks everything, right? Maybe it's a person that rereads their text messages before they send them just to make sure they don't say too much.
Right.
Is that verse talking about like restraining your lips, not saying everything? Do you think that's going to help or make people make their overthinking worse? Or how does a person like that, take the application from that?
That's
point?
great. Yeah, well, I think there's different, like you kind of alluded to there, which I really liked, is there's different types of people with different types of personalities.
Yeah.
So like that verse, that proverb is super helpful for me because naturally I got diarrhea of the mouth and I just let it fly. Like if I'm just living in my flesh, it's just what is in my mind is going to come out of my mouth. So what I've had to learn over the years more and more is how do I walk by the Spirit? How do I pause, pray, then say, not just think and say, right? Not everything in my mind needs to come out of my mouth. So that's been really huge for me. There are others that maybe have a more deliberative personality. Maybe you're more thoughtful. Maybe you struggle with being a little fearful of how your words might impact other people. You might need to work on the other side of maybe being more bold with your words and speaking your mind more, So I think it just depends on the person. But for most people, I think, even for those that are more deliberative, we all have a tendency at times to get into our emotions and say things we shouldn't. And so it's just a good practice. And the book of James, which is called the book of wisdom in the New Testament, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes is the wisdom literature in the Old Testament. James is often called the book of wisdom in the New Testament, and it talks a lot about taming the tongue and how the tongue, it's like a little rudder on a ship. And even though the rudder on a ship is really small, it steers the whole ship. And so the point is even though your tongue is small, it literally shapes the direction of your whole life. Because as Proverbs also says, there is power of life and death in the tongue. What you say literally determines the direction of your relationships. It determines the direction of your life. And so we do need to be selective with our speech. We don't need to be fearful about our speech. We don't need to overthink and be anxious about our speech, but we need to be thoughtful and we need to be selective with our speech, which it just means this, okay? The Bible says this in Ephesians. Don't let anything come out of your mouth unless it is for the building up of other people. So just ask yourself that question. Is what I'm saying true? Is it building the person up? Is it helpful? Is it constructive? Or is this just something I'm saying out of my flesh and my feelings, out of my emotions? If it's just in your emotions, don't say it. So, yeah. And also, let me add this too.
Yeah.
Just because you think something true doesn't mean you need to say that truth to a person. Just because you know something is right doesn't mean you need to say that it's right. Now, are there times where we need to speak the truth in love to people and say hard things? Yes, of course we need to. But there is one Holy Spirit, and you are not him. There are times where you speaking up and saying something to somebody is just not helpful. And so we need to learn not only what to say, but when to say it and who to say it to.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, I think the when to say is really important, and that like really stands out to me, especially because yesterday we were traveling back home with 2 toddlers and being on a plane for all those hours. I had a lot of thoughts going through my mind.
Yeah.
But I had to remember
thoughts of maybe
now,
we throw them out of the emergency exit here.
Yeah,
in this plane.
exactly.
Like,
why aren't people moving faster? Like, why don't I'm like, you could get frustrated in moments like that. And I'm just like, maybe I don't have to say everything that's in my mind right now. I think that, like you said, you talked about the when is super important. Like maybe now is not the time when you're frustrated, when you're angry. Maybe it's best
So question, I have a thought for you. Like if your wife's really tired and she's really hungry and she's had a really hard day with the kids, do you think that's a good time for you to maybe talk to her about an issue in your relationship that you've been frustrated with?
No, I don't think so. Yeah,
right. Exactly. I mean, it's like I've had to learn that in our marriage. Is like there's been times where because sometimes there's things that you're dealing with or you're struggling with personally that you want to share with your spouse or with somebody, or there's something in your relationship that you want to talk through. It's like I want to talk through it now, and it's like, well, is that really what's best? It might be better to have a good night of sleep and talk about it tomorrow, or when they're not dealing with something, and so. And especially when you have young kids, it's like finding the time to talk about certain things can sometimes be tough, but it is important to say it at the right time, because you could say the right thing at the wrong time. And if you say the right thing at the wrong time, it's the wrong thing to say. You got to say the right thing at the right time. And that's, it's not always easy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Speaking of that, you talked about you talked about 3 confrontation questions.
Yeah.
Can you say it calmly and lovingly?
Yeah.
Is the other person open to it?
Right.
And is it constructive?
Yeah.
Let's say somebody says, or it is in a situation where they say, I have a family member, like an in-law,
okay,
or a sibling.
This is hypothetical, right?
Yes. That they just can't walk away from. Right. And the 3 confrontation questions all come back to no. Right. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, it's not calm, or they're not calm. They're not open. They're not, or it's not constructive. Mm-hmm. What do you do when you can't avoid that person?
Right.
And you can't, that's not an option.
It's good.
Right? So, yeah.
Well, let's talk about this for a second. If you cannot say something that's constructive, and you cannot say something calmly and lovingly, and you cannot say something that they'll receive, right? So maybe they're just not open to hearing what you have to say, okay? If you're going to try to share something with, let's say, an in-law, and they're not going to receive it, you're wasting your time if you're trying to tell them, hey, stop treating me this way or stop talking this way. Like, but dude, I got to deal with them. Like every Christmas, we're together. Like, every Thanksgiving, we're together. Yep. Like birthdays, they're there. So now you got to shift into, if you can't have conversations of confrontation that are loving and kind and truthful and lead to meaningful growth for both parties and for the relationship as a whole, then you have to shift into a different gear, which is what I would call managing a difficult relationship. So what that means is you don't need to be best friends with this person. I always say this, you don't need to be best friends, but you do need to be friendly. You do need to be loving. You don't need to be like, at a family gathering and talking to them the whole time. But you need to be on good terms with one another. You need to be kind to them. You need to be patient with them. And you need to accept this. And this is the hardest part, accept that you don't have control. You do not have control over every single difficult person in your life. A controlling, prideful, vengeful, bitter person tries to control difficult people. By the way, if you're trying to do that, how's that going for you? Probably not so great. You cannot change people, only Jesus Christ can. And so what I'd encourage you to do is, don't try to change the person. If they're not open to a conversation, if they're not, able to hear you share something constructive, then just manage the relationship. Be friendly with them, be cordial with them, and then set boundaries. Set boundaries. If there's certain behaviors or habits that they have that affect you and your family, draw the appropriate boundaries that are needed in that situation. And then, if they react and are crazy, expect that. If they're kind of crazy, then just expect it. Learn to deal with it. Learn to forgive them. But you don't need to be best friends with them. And it's best to just keep your mouth shut. Because if you try to speak up to a person that will not hear you, again, you're wasting your time, and it's gonna erupt into a larger conflict that will just inflame the situation. It'll make it worse. Yeah. So manage it. Don't try to change it. Jesus can change it. Pray.
That's right. That's right. Let's talk about like another hypothetical. For example, let's say there's like a new believer that heard the message on Sunday about guidance for relationships, and they think like, I don't have anyone in my life who's proven faithful yet.
Right.
Do I just stay guarded until someone does, or what are they supposed to do in that situation?
Yeah, I think you got to go find people that are faithful.
Yeah.
And that's why the church exists. So get into a Connect group. If you're at Arroyo, go to the Connect class, get in a Connect group. That's a start. Faithful people, sometimes they'll find you, but more often than not, you got to find them. When I look at my greatest mentors in my life, there's maybe one that found me and sought me out. Most of them, I had to seek them out. I had to go to them. I had to find them. I had to ask them questions. And so, if you're looking for good advice, if you're looking for good relationships, you got to, I think, initiate. Because that's something that you kind of have to take ownership of. And the moment you take ownership of that, the more you're going to see the results, because you're not going to be a victim. You're going to be a person looking. And listen, there are good people. Just find a good church. If you don't go to Arroyo, find a good church. You'll find some good people. And if you love them well, I think that they'll help you out, and it'll be good. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, again, relationships aren't microwavable, meals. Yeah. So you're not going to find somebody instantly. It takes time. So be patient and rest in God. You can trust Him. Seek guidance from Him. Go to His Word. Go to His Spirit. But yeah, it takes time. Relationships take time. So, absolutely. I wouldn't be too overly guarded, but just let your guard down enough and try to seek out the right people. And if you do that long enough, you'll find somebody and some people eventually. So
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I have a couple more questions. Let's see. The second to last one would be this. We talked about how love covers all offenses. Mm-hmm. And this one's a little heavy, but what would you say to somebody that maybe is in a marriage that's not safe and they hear that, that verse? How would you direct or help a person who feels like they're in a marriage that's not safe?
Yeah. Well, last night I was with my daughter, and we were doing our nightly Bible stories and prayer time, and I was telling her the story of Jesus being crucified on the cross, and I think it's one of the most powerful portions in all of Scripture, where Christ is looking down at the soldiers that put the nails through his hands and feet, and he looks at them and he says, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do." So I'm going to start here because this is most important. If Jesus Christ could forgive his killers, you could forgive the person that you feel like has killed your entire life. Maybe they betrayed you through adultery or stealing money, or I don't know what they did. Neglecting you financially. I recently was hearing a story about that, about a woman that her husband just said, "I'm not paying for anything, and so I just don't want to be around you." Or maybe as abandoning. I've heard stories of people just going home to seeing their spouse packing up a bag, getting ready to leave them. So if Christ could forgive his killers, you could forgive yours. If it is an unsafe marriage, meaning there's physical abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's, some type of financial abuse where they're not caring for your practical, personal, basic needs, well, then I think the first step is, separation. And, it's not an immediate divorce. It's a separation and a time of discernment where you enter into that. And again, don't want to be a broken record, but the more serious the situation is, the more counsel you need. Mm-hmm. So if you think you're in an unsafe marriage, you got to get some serious Christian counsel. get some Christian counseling, talk to a pastor, talk to some godly friends, maybe talk to a Christian person that's been through something like this. Unfortunately, there's a lot of those out there, right? 50% of marriages end in divorce. So I would just say, remove yourself from the situation. You do not need to. A lot of people think, okay, this happened, I need to file for divorce tomorrow. Take a breather. Maybe you need to just remove yourself from the situation, separate yourself, pray, talk to some people about it. And again, I'm not saying wait months to, figure out what you got to do. Every situation is different. But pause, pray, get some space, get some counsel, and then you can make a decision on what needs to happen. Is there a possibility for restoration? Have they admitted their wrongs? Are they sincerely sorry? Or are they sorry for how they hurt you? Or are they sorry just for how that's impacting them? Right? These are tough questions to answer. But if you just take the time to sometimes, again, if it's a truly unsafe situation, you got to have that space and that separation to discern, what are our next steps and what should we do? So, and God is a God of restoration. God can bring restoration out of terrible situations. But restoration in relationships takes two, not just one. It takes two to tango. A marriage especially, it's a dance. And if you got one person that wants to bring restoration and forgiveness, but the other person wants to keep living like the devil, well then, there's your answer. So,
yeah, sure. That's great. Thanks for addressing that, man. That's what I love about, these podcast episodes that we're just, talk about the
I
hard
love how
things,
specific it is too.
Yeah.
Bring it on. Let's do more.
Yeah, I got one more, and I think about kind of us when I think of this this question. Our personalities are like kind of opposites.
Yeah.
I talked about like the person who just like is very talkative, and I feel like that's you. You could talk to anybody and address any situation. I'm like the complete opposite. I'm sure you can tell like by this episode or most of the episodes that we do. I'm like usually the one that's saying less, but I think about this. It's like, what's the difference between being selective with your speech and just avoiding hard conversations forever? You kind of talked about it a little bit, in another question, but how do I know which one I'm doing? So first, what's the difference between having selective speech from the verse Proverbs 10:19 and then just avoiding hard conversations forever? And then how do I know which one I'm doing?
That's really good. Well, I think it is good to have awareness of God, because in an awareness with God, you have awareness of self. And the more you're aware of yourself, the more you'll be aware of, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are your tendencies, and so, you already mentioned what some of your tendencies are and what some of my tendencies are. I know what my tendencies are, so I know what I need to be working on, and I know what I need to be aware of. So I would just say it starts with first asking yourself a question. How do I come across to people? And I would even ask that question to people that you're close to. If you're married, ask your spouse. They'll tell you. They've probably been waiting for you to ask. They've probably been telling you just haven't been listening. And you can ask them hey, do you think I talk too much and I don't listen to you well enough? Or do you feel like there's some things in my heart that I'm not sharing that I need to share? Ask your spouse, ask a brother or a sister, and give them permission, and say, hey, I want you to be honest, and they'll tell you. And then once you're aware of your tendencies, then you kind of just get to work on them, And so if you need to speak up more, then it's like, okay, Holy Spirit, here's my prayer. Give me the courage to say what you want me to say. And then if it's, you need to maybe work on, shutting up a little bit more like me, it's like, okay, Lord, help me to restrain this beast that is my tongue. Help me to get a leash on this thing and a shock collar and, so just help me, and if you're able to be, I think and this is a really big thing, self-awareness. I'm going to go back to that. I don't want to be too hard on people, but I'm just going to be truthful. So many people lack self-awareness in their communication to others and how they come across. And the reason why that is because oftentimes we're not really thinking about as much how we come across to others and how we're making them feel. We're just kind of saying what we're thinking, and we're doing what we think is right. And we have a tendency as human beings to just assume that the way we are by default is okay and how we're communicating. It's like, oh, I'm just saying the truth, or, I'm just, being polite. And it's like, okay, well, just, really, I think it starts with the self-awareness of asking yourself those questions, asking other people those questions about yourself, and then just, doing the work based on where you're at. So,
yeah, I love that. That's great. It's great, man. Hey, those are all the questions I have following up from Sunday.
I have something we can talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to ask you a question.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm putting you in the hot seat.
Let's do it.
See, I'm in the hot seat. You're in the hot couch. One of the things I talked about was neediness versus neglect, and how some people are more prone towards being really needy in their relationships, and then other people are prone to kind of neglect. And so the idea of neediness, there's a verse in the proverb, and I love it. I don't think I've ever heard anybody preach on this verse before. I'm sure other people have. I just hadn't heard it yet. But it basically says, hey, don't go over to your neighbor's house too often, because if you do, they're like going to get sick of you and hate you. and then the other verse I brought up was, a friend loves at all times, but a brother is born for adversity. Yeah. So on one hand, we are to be loving, faithful friends that aren't neglectful. But then on the other hand, we're not to be needy and like bother people too much. I don't know, I'd be kind of curious, what are your thoughts on that? Do you tend to be more needy or neglectful? How do you deal with needy people in your life and neglectful people in your life? Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I think me, I definitely tend on being more like I don't want to bother people as much,
right.
And I think there's definitely some negatives to that, where we talked about it a little bit ago, like not speaking your mind or not sometimes sharing the truth when it's needed with other people, because I'm just like, I don't want to bother them. Right. With needy people in my life, I go back to boundaries, and obviously start with love. And when it comes to the moment where I know I can't be there for that person,
right.
Or it's become too much, there's got to be some boundary set. But on the other hand, what was the other part? You said needy or neglectful. With people who, are you asking me like when people are neglectful towards me, or if I'm struggling with?
Yeah, either or. Yeah, whatever you're feeling.
No. I just handle it with love first, and just pray and ask the Lord for each person. Each person is different, and so with each relationship I have, it's different.
Yeah,
and I think boundaries are one of the biggest things to set, and where it's needed. So
right.
Yeah. What about you?
That's good. Yeah, I think I like that you said boundaries for needy people. With needy people, you're gonna have to draw boundaries, and then with neglectful people, if you want them in your life, you're gonna have to kind of pull them in. Yeah. It's like it's almost like with one group of people, you're kind of gently pushing back, and then the other ones are gonna want to gently, kind of pull back in. Mm-hmm. And I think for myself, it's interesting. I have elements of being needy and neglectful in my life. Sometimes I can get so wrapped up in my busyness and work and things that I don't spend enough time with my kids or my family that I should sometimes. Or there's times where, because I'm an extrovert and I always want to be around people, it's like I'm just like constantly like, being around people and wanting to talk, and like I could be better at spending more time with just the Lord instead of always having to spend time with people. And like, if you're a person like me that sometimes can struggle with being emotionally needy with people, really the key is just finding your needs met in Christ. If you have all your needs fully met in Him and your heart is filled with His love, you're not going to go to other people with like this neediness of like, oh my gosh, like you have to talk to me, you have to be with me, you have to listen to me, you have to hang out with me, you have to do this with me, or else I'm going to be depressed and lonely and sad and I'm alone. You can go to them, yes, wanting to, receive kindness from them and love from them, because that's a part of the human heart, is wanting a relationship with others and not just with God. But you're not going to them in such a needy way where you're asking them to carry a weight that only God can carry. Right. And I think this is really at the root of a lot of issues for a lot of marriages, is we are sometimes needy with our spouses, and we feel like we need them to be perfect, and we need them to always understand us. Like that was like, because my wife and I are really, really different. But even if you're married to somebody and you're not that different from your spouse, like personality wise, the reality is they're never going to fully understand you. And sometimes we could have this neediness of, I need you to fully understand me. I need you to always be there for me. I need you. It's like, they can't. Nobody can. Only Jesus can. Yeah. So like, is my wife there for me and understands me to a certain degree and loves me to a certain degree? Of course she does. She's amazing. But Jesus Christ is the only one that fully understands me. He fully loves me. He knows everything about me. And if I can rest in that, I'm not going to go to my wife and I'm not going to go to my kids and be like, oh my gosh, like I need you. And I'm going to like, be so butthurt if you don't, like if you fail. It's like, no, it's like, you're a person. That's okay. You got freedom to fail. I love you. I'll forgive you. Let's move forward.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's all I got.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time to, talk about this today. And it's a great conversation on relationships, man. And hey, even though with all the answers and things that we talked about today, I'm sure there's still specific situations that we didn't get to that people are going through. And with all of those things, going back to what you said, use wisdom, talk to God, and definitely, with all situations, forgive first, quickly, and fully, and ask God for wisdom for the.
And by the way, if you have a difficult person, go ahead and send them this episode. Yeah. I'm kidding. Hey, first apply this to your life and then share it with other people. Yeah, but seriously, speaking of sharing, if this did bless you, you should share it on Instagram, wherever you're on social media, and just get it out there. We'd love to see more people hear what God's doing through this podcast. So thanks for being with us, guys. See you next time. All right.